The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to The Right to Know. Today my guest is former Alderman Paula Johnson. Welcome, Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you. You can just call me Paula.
Okay, it's hard for me to call you Mrs. Johnson. My mother would correct me, but I appreciate that. I looked at your bio a little bit, and you have quite a history. You've been a long advocate in the city for changing cause, and you've been a House of Representative, a state congressperson in the state. You've been on the Board of Public Education, and you've been an alderman, ward alderman, and also an alderman at large.
No, not a ward alderman, just an alderman at large.
Oh, you went right to the top.
Right to the top. That's all I want to do is I go right to the top.
Well, I want to talk about your history a little bit, but I'd rather just jump ahead a little bit. We can backtrack if it's okay. Last night there was the Board of Alderman meeting to talk about the budget and some of the amendments that were going forward. So the first one was there was a motion to a resolution to move the Citizen Services Department from the mayor's office into the board because the mayor fired that person. And it was defeated 9-6. But just tell us how you felt about that whole process.
Well, first of all, I said last night, we have 3 different levels of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. I never could say that word, I got it out. And why we have these 3 branches is for checks and balances. And when the aldermen kind of try to pull a department from another part of government, it's not right. If you want to do it, you do it with, the proper ways. And I don't even think there was a resolution on that. I think it was just that they were trying to move it within the budget.
Correct.
I know that when we did it, when I was an alderman, we took the economic development director and moved him out of the community development department. And we did it the right way by legislation, and we moved it over to the mayor's office. And the problem that I had with this last night was, number one, they don't want it when the mayor interferes in their business. And they were interfering in the mayor's business. I know Patty Rogers. I think she's a wonderful person. I think she did an excellent job with the city. There was nothing that Patty Rogers couldn't do to fix a problem. And she would go to the source and get it done. But beside that, it isn't our business, and it's not the alderman's business, what happened there. And I thought it was wrong when Alderman Siegel was talking about Ms. Rogers, and somebody said, you have to stop because this is a personnel issue. And Alderman Dean, and I think Alderman Siegel first said, we have a waiver, and then Alderman Dean passed around the waiver. Well, a waiver's fine, but you know what? It was still a personnel issue. And they should have gone into non-public to discuss this with the mayor. Right. Maybe they could have gotten a resolution. Maybe they could have tried to talk to the mayor and see if they could bring her back. Something must have happened. And I'm not a fan of the mayor. I think the mayor, in my opinion, is a bully. And I know a lot of people in City Hall are afraid to work underneath her. And the Telegraph just reported that over the weekend, that Alderman Moriarty said that when he was campaigning, this is what he was told. Well, I knew about this even before he was campaigning. Right. I knew about it when in her first term. So it took Alderman Moriarty this long when he ran for alderman at large to find this out. So there has to be a commonality here. And I feel that they should have kept their nose out of this last night, because when the mayor said she sits down and she doesn't fight, she doesn't scream, she doesn't lose her temper. But I also said last night, but it's your body language, that tells the whole story. Right. So that's my opinion about it.
Now, a lot of the aldermen have, and alderwomen have expressed concerns about what is being transcribed in the Telegraph and how it makes the board look unprofessional. Is there any reason why they brought this up before the board? Because it doesn't make them look good.
Well, there was an article in the Telegraph about alderwomen, which, if you want to be an alderwoman, change the charter to be politically correct. You know, you ran for an alderman position. That's what you really are. Alderman Brown wrote some nasty stuff on Facebook, and last night she apologized for it. But I've also read many a times about the code of conduct, and I have it sitting right in front of me. And each member, it says here, F, each member is responsible for the behavior of his or her fellow members, since inappropriate behavior which goes unchallenged reflects badly on the entire board. End of story. Alderman McCarthy wrote a nasty letter to me over a year ago regarding my body language when Diane Sheehan verbally attacked me in the back of City Hall parking lot. And if Alderman Sheehan thinks I'm going to forget about this, it isn't going to happen. She owes me an apology, and so does Alderman McCarthy for writing that letter, because I asked for an apology continuously. Nobody on the board wanted to do it. It looks badly on the entire board, and that's what's happening again. One bad apple spoils it for the rest.
Right. Well, it seems as though a lot of the candidates who ran this year ran on the platform of, you know, open government, availability, low taxes, and camaraderie on the board. And it seemed in the beginning that that was their focus. But it seems that now the separation, as Waters does seek its own level, has started to actually be pervade to the citizens.
You could throw that out the window with them all.
Yeah.
I was at a ward meeting, and I know that Alderman Siegel's probably not going to be happy with me, but I don't think he's happy with me to begin with. I asked about public-private partnerships, and I asked Mr. Griffin about it. And he said to me, you and your transparency, it's costing Corporation Counsel money to look for this. And I said, no, Mr. Griffin is in the financial division. And he's a director. I said, so I've asked him. And unfortunately, I can't find any of this information because they're all in resolutions. So there's no way that it's labeled that you can just type in public-private partnerships and you can get this information. Transparency is the most important thing in government. Being able to talk to elected officials, being able to get information is the most important thing, because what they forget, it's your money that they're spending.
Right.
Taxpayers' dollars, revenue from parking meters, like the downtown welfare charity for the downtown, $105,000 plus because they want to do things downtown. We're giving them sidewalks already downtown. How much more do they need in corporate welfare?
Yeah. Just want to back up a little bit. Let's tell my viewers, or our viewers, explain what a public-private partnership is so they understand what you're referring to.
That means a public entity and a private entity work together. An example is, and I'm going to go into this example, the Legacy Playground, which was supposed to be all private money, but they were giving the public playground to use. So that's public-private partnership. Mr. Griffin told me, you know, if you want to find out about a public-private partnership, he told me a couple to type in. He said, you could do the Legacy. And I said, oh, so we're finally admitting that that's a public-private partnership. But it's not just the land that we're going to be giving them, because Alderman Sheehan, in her wisdom, said that it's about $86,000, you know, when they were talking about the west side of Greeley, that we were going to have to do site work, and that's what's happening. Part of the Friends of the Greeley Park paid $2,500 out of their pocket, and the Legacy Group should have paid $2,500 out of their pocket for that study, which the city paid. Yeah. Okay, so there's $2,500.
Right.
Now we're talking about the site design, which is $15,000, which again, the Legacy Group should be paying for that. It's their plan. Why should I be paying for this?
Isn't that what they came and promoted, that this was going to be a gift?
It's going to be a gift.
So aren't gifts supposed to be free?
Free, F-R-E-E.
Yes.
Like I've said in the chamber many a times.
Yeah.
Free, but free has no value when it's not free.
So that money that the city's spending and putting out for this Legacy Playground, I think everybody agrees that the playground is a great idea.
Absolutely.
No one's against it. It's just where the location is and what the city is contributing towards that.
And the way it was done.
Right.
It was done because the mayor doesn't feel that any time you have any labor involved, like the downtown sidewalk, that's not calculated in as far as cost. And they had many people from Public Works doing designs. Well, wait a second. If they're doing it on city time, there's a cost factor there. You could say it's in-kind services. You could say the city's being nice. But there's a value to it because somebody's labor is making this design that instead of them doing city work, they're doing something for a private person. Now, if you want to do that, I'll let them come in and redesign my house and do what the addition I'd like to do or anything else if they're so free to give out time of public employees.
Well, you're not opposed to giving out all free time. You're, depending upon what it is, I think you're professing that this time should be, what the cost, the fact it should be available and open so the citizens have a right to know where the cost is, and then also make a approach of aldermen to either approve or disapprove that particular cost. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's coming from the Board of Public Works. So the Board of Public Works has that control, it comes out of their budget. But the point becomes, if she's doing it for one class of people, one particular group, how many other people is she doing it for? But there's a cost factor behind it. The cost factor is, what are they not doing and accomplishing for the city? They work for the city, not for a private entity. Right. So the private entity has to do their own site work and design and bring it to the board, not that the city does it and then bring it to a board. Right.
So, well, I know we jumped ahead. I know that we go all over the place. There's so many issues affecting the city presently, and that's why I asked you on the show, because you're very outspoken and you always say what you think. And I know there's no hands in your pocket and your hands aren't in anyone else's pocket, which I commend you for. But the board last night voted for to set up a paving fund. Okay, so they're basically taking $1 million out of the cost, which would affect our the increase in costs for the taxes and everything else. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's paving does need to be addressed to the city, but was that the right way? Was it too quickly pushed through? Should there have been more diligence in researching how to approach that?
When I was on the board from 2002 to 2005, we needed to do paving. Back then, Mayor Streeter's way with George Crombie was to bond, I think it was like $10 million worth of paving. And we could spread it out over 10 years. Now, the cost, I don't remember exactly, but they wanted to spread it out over 10 years. So I did my research. Well, if the roads only last 5 years and you're spreading it out 10 years, by the time you get to 10 years and the payment, the roads are no good anymore. So they were talking bonding. Well, I'm sure there's other projects in the city that isn't an emergency project, that money could be put towards this. If there's money left over from snow plowing, I truly believe money should stay in a snow plowing account, because in case you have a bad year. But if you have an excess amount, you can use some of that money to put down towards paving. Do I think paving was more important than the downtown sidewalk? Absolutely. Could she have done that downtown sidewalks for less? Absolutely. But again, she didn't put the cost of labor in there, so you don't know the truth. The roads are in horrible condition. Right. They're breaking up underneath the cars. It was a way around the spending cap. Why didn't you just do the vote and override the spending cap and be done? And I believe it was Alderman Chassie that said it was creative financing last night.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. I applaud him for coming out and saying it was creative financing that was done last night. Yeah. Truth in budgeting, that's what the bottom line, truth in budgeting, transparency in government, that's what people want to see.
Well, the budget wasn't passed, as you told me, because we were both at the meeting last night and I couldn't stay, we both couldn't stay to the end. But apparently the budget was not passed. So now what happens, because with the budget, the board's supposed to have a vote on a budget before August 1st. What does that affect, are there any ramifications for that?
No, they'll just call another meeting. When I was on the board, I held up the budget a couple of times. Budgets didn't pass till like September, October, and they go into a supplemental budget just like Washington does, just enough to keep the city running. No big deal. You know, the problem is that they couldn't come up with any reductions in the budget. It's not the cuts. The budget isn't passed. How do you say cuts? It's reductions. Was the school department going to shrivel up if they didn't get that $160,000? The superintendent shouldn't get a $5,400+ raise. Right. What has improved with the school district? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Was it going to, I truly believe that we need more police on the street. I understand Mr. T-Boom's argument with the overtime, and that's been a big thing, the overtime budget. Could you move money out of there from overtime into another officer? Well, you do the overtime, you keep the amount of patrolmen lower because you're giving overtime, so you're decreasing benefits and uniforms and adding 2 more people. But could you probably reduce it? I don't know. I didn't go that heavily into the budget to really check everything. I'm not an alderman, but when I was an alderman, I'd have $1 to $2 million reductions every year. I didn't get them voted through, but there's areas to reduce in that budget. I said take away the mayor's $3,000 expense last night.
Yes. Well, in 1987-97, we were voted the best city, and we are far from that today due to the higher taxes and the low scores in schools and crime. So how do we get back to that point?
Well, back then we had Mayor Donches and Mayor Davison with the two each time. Things were different back then. I remember Davison got recalled because he said he was a spending cap, and then he didn't abide by the spending cap and some other things, so a whole bunch of us recalled him. You need to really look at the budget. You know, I think it comes down to what is government's responsibility? Police, fire, public works, I believe, the roads, maintain your roads. What else is our responsibility? Is public-private partnership our responsibility? No. The civic account, is that our responsibility? I'm touching areas that nobody will ever touch. Is that we have to provide food and clothing and EBT cards for everybody that don't want to get out and work. I believe that if people hit hard times, yes, we should help them. I believe if they need a hand up, yes, we should give them a hand up. Should we help train people to get back to work? Absolutely. Should people sit on the dole all the time? Absolutely not, because there are people that need it because they hit hard times, medical, other issues. That's what it's there for, not for people to stay on it all the time. So what is government's real responsibility? And I've been asking people that. What is government's responsibility? And so when you take a look at it, we've gotten out of the responsibility what we have to do. If people go out there and make a living, hopefully at the end of the day they'll come home and they'll feel better because they made the money versus having somebody give them a check to go to the food store. And I say to everybody, when you see what I buy with money and you see what somebody else buys with my money at the grocery stores, there's a difference. It's free money. Free has no value.
Right. I want to get back to the legacy playground and a lot of these, like the private partnerships and the lack of open government in the city. How long has that not been going on? The lack of open government, the ability for citizens to find out information, or for the ability for the board to get information from the mayor and vice versa. Has that been a problem for a long time?
From what I hear, that you can't talk to department heads. I know that when I was an alderman, Mayor Streeter didn't like me to do it, so I'd write everything up under the right to know law. I'd go around, and that's all you really need to do. Can she really block you? I don't believe she can, in my opinion, because you're serving the public and you should have access. Do you have the right to demand things? No. Do you have the right to get information if a constituent calls? Like I said last night to the Board of Alderman, when Ms. Rogers and that position was created, it took a lot of heat off of them that when constituents had complaints, they called the alderman. But instead, the alderman would field it to her, or they would just call her. I had a lot of constituents that called me, and I went out and did site walks and did whatever I had to do to solve, you know, issues, concerns, problems. But you have to make it open. You have to make it transparent, because if not, people start mistrusting government. And then there becomes that distrust, that disconnect, like a lot of people are feeling down in Washington. Local government is easier to access your elected officials at whatever board they're on. And you should be able to, ask questions and ask for something to be done without a roadblock.
When you were running for Alderman Lodge this past election in the patch, you were asked what were the key issues affecting your ward, and you said you were running for Alderman at Large, and you said that, you know, affecting the lack of oversight, control, spending, and crime. Okay. Have you seen any improvement in any of those areas?
Spending is still a big thing. I said last night at the Board of Alderman meeting, which was, I should say, July 22nd, so people know what last night is when this is aired, July 22nd. You know, 2% is not reasonable anymore. When the CPI index is 1.4%, and that's all that you get with Social Security. So when your budget goes up 2 to 3%, the people on fixed income is already behind the 8 ball. So the spending continues to go. Everybody thinks 2% will be under 3%, will be, yeah, she thinks that's fine. I don't think it's fine. Why can't we get a year or two of no increases? Why can't they control and tie their hands? What is so important that has to be done that people can't get relief? Crime. When you pick up the paper or you read it online, all you see is another drug bust, sexual assault, someone abusing somebody, you know, so it is still a major piece in the city. And that's why I supported the police in saying that, you know, we need some more officers on the street. We need to get control of this. We need to let people know, don't come to Nashua with your drugs. Don't come to Nashua if you're going to abuse people. We want this a nice city again to become the #1 place to live. We want to bring jobs to the city, bring businesses to the city. But when you have crime, who wants to come?
Speaking of bringing jobs to the city and also businesses, isn't that the Mr. Gagliano's job?
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be also the job of the Chamber of Commerce to help promote businesses? So have they been lackadaisical in those efforts?
I don't know. I don't know. I think Mr. Williams, if I read one time in the Telegraph, he was asking what Nashua could do for the downtown. And Mr. Williams, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I believe he did ask that. And my answer to him, what is the downtown merchants going to do for the downtown merchants? They're getting $105,000 a year from us, anything over, I think, $758 in parking meter fees. They're getting. That should be money that goes back into the general fund to help reduce taxes. But what can they do for themselves? I've said that you needed like an anchor store, like Alex is an anchor store down there. People come to Alex shoe store. It's a great store, it's family owned, great people down there, you know.
And they have a great program to put in $10 a week for shoes, and you go buy a shoe before you pay the $100, whatever you request. So it's a great program.
It's a great program, and they've done it. It's something that's worked downtown. If you get a couple more anchor stores like that, and if you're catering to people who are going to live and work downtown, but you've got to get more than retail in the city, because Nashua's a city of retail now, and they're going to walk to any type, you need to have like a superette. And I have mentioned that to Mr. Gilligani, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, and he asked me what a superette was. I said, well, go to New York City to see, because you can't put a big market down in New York City, but they have these supermarkets that cater to the people who live downtown in the city, and they have everything that people want and need. So they can walk and be, and it's like their own little community when you live in Manhattan.
Right.
And that's what you kind of have to do. The train is not going to bring the people in that you want to bring in.
Right.
You know, in a Ward 5 meeting, we talked about that. You know, I don't care about the kids that are drinking in Boston. Let the parents pick them up. We're going to put a train in there for kids to come back and forth. You have to bring the jobs. You bring the jobs, you'll bring the railroad in here. There'll be a reason why. People don't shop on a train. I lived in New York. I went to work every day on the rail. So I understand the train. I used to take the Long Island Railroad. I used to take the train, the subway. You have to bring jobs which bring the rail in that would be cost effective to bring it into the city.
And then people would move into the city if there were jobs available.
Yeah, we're a sleeping community. We're the sleeper. You know, you look at Eggs and Wine with all the new luxury buildings. How many people work in the city? How many people go to Mass, to the 128 Beltway?
Right.
We're a sleeper city. That's all.
Yeah. And the traffic, it is horrible, because I go down there quite a bit sometimes myself. But also in the budget, to get back to the budget, I know we're jumping around a little bit, but there seem to have been a lot of pay increases for the upper management in the city. And how do you think the citizens feel about with their taxes going up and some of these upper management getting pay increases? We really, as someone said last night at the budget meeting, we're just getting out of a recession, quote unquote, if you believe that.
I don't.
But you know, even if we're at the end of the recession or beginning of an economic input, you know, increase, why would both the board and the mayor propose large salary increases for a number of people?
Well, they try to kind of keep sometimes the merit people with the union people with the cost, with the increases. Okay, I get that, because you don't want some of the merit people to join a union, the former union. At one time, if we all remember, when people worked for government, they didn't get the best pay, but they got the best benefits and the best retired pensions. to make up for lower pay.
Right.
Now it's not like that anymore. Now you got administrators that, you're right, that make a lot of money. And one of the aldermen used to say to me, I don't want to mention his name, he's been in there for like 20 years. In order to attract and keep good people, we have to pay them higher salaries. Well, I don't believe that's true, because they couldn't go to positions outside of government at this point. There's no positions out there really that's going to pay like the way they are now, because they stay with the city, what, 20, 25, 30 years? They get a good pension. They get a great pension. They still get good health care benefits. You know, it's not as great as it used to be, but nobody has great benefits anymore.
Right.
And they've got to come in line. But you know what? They make good money. They make good money. And, and I talked about, again, Mr. Conrad, which the Board of Aldermen have nothing to do with the school district. They only have bottom line control.
Right.
So they can take all this money out, but they can do whatever they want with it. But that's fine. You take the money out and let them be responsible and accountable on where is the most appropriate place to spend your money in the school district. Mm-hmm. Would it be with a superintendent whose test scores aren't going up? And they talk about the factors. We have more lower income kids. We have this. We have that. Poverty has been around for centuries, and it's always going to be around. It's how do we bring kids out of poverty?
Right. Right.
And you have to get to the parents, too. You have to create a workforce.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult. Before, our time is almost up, but I just wondered, how would you grade the overall the Board of Aldermen from A to F if you were a teacher? How would you grade them?
Oh, my God. That's kind of, I don't think an F. I would say maybe a C+.
Okay. I'm going to quickly go through the aldermen's names, or alderwomen's, in case somebody won't get mad at me, and just give me a grade for each one and what you think.
Okay.
You have a lot of history there, and I respect you a lot. You're a very outspoken person. And
nobody likes me there anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. Ward 1, Alderman McGinnis.
I like him. I would give him a B.
Okay. Ward 2, Alderman Dowd.
C-.
Alderman 3, Alderman Shulman.
Oh, I think a B+.
Okay. Ward 4, Woman Brown.
She gets a D-.
Okay. Ward 5, Alderman Susi.
He gets a B.
Ward 6, Alderman Chassie.
He gets a B-.
Ward 7, Woman Karen.
C+.
Ward 8, Alderman Melissa Golia.
C.
And Ward 9, Alderman Siegel.
You know, I like him for his contracts. He's a contract man. But I would say a B-.
Okay. Well, we're out of time. I was going to ask you what you'd like to see in the next mayor, but maybe we could do another show about that. I would like to thank you, Paula Alderman Johnson, former Alderman Johnson, for coming and taking time out of your busy day. And I'm sure the citizens will be wide open with their eyes to hear what you have to say, and hopefully they'll listen to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
The Right to Know Public Access Show is aimed at providing knowledge of current issues, policies, and the decision-making process that affects the lives of the citizens of Nashua. My mission is to help the citizens understand city politics, in that they may make informed choices in the city where they live. I wish to inform, educate, and enlighten the people of Nashua because they have the right to know.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.